It's kind of amazing, isn't it? You take a story like Frankenstein, published, what, 1818?
Way back then, over 2 centuries ago.
Right. And yet it still has this incredible grip on our imagination. Almost everyone knows the name, even if they haven't, actually read the book.
It really has become something much bigger than just the novel itself.
Exactly. And that's what we're really digging into today. This isn't just about the book. We're looking at the Frankenstein myth as this, well, ongoing reference point for social stuff, ethical questions, especially for scientists.
Yeah, and for you listening, if you want to get a solid understanding quickly without getting sort of lost in academic jargon, this is like your shortcut. We're unpacking why this old story still matters so much, particularly in the world of science today.
Okay, so we've got some interesting sources lined up. There's a research paper from 2019 looking at how the myth acts as a reference for scientists.
Right, that's the one focusing on biotechnology, robotics, AI researchers.
Then some really personal thoughts from someone named Tanya.
Tanya's remarks, very insightful.
And finally, a piece breaking down the themes and symbols, kind of a psychology perspective.
So putting it all together, our mission, you can say, is to understand how this whole Frankenstein idea shapes how scientists see their own work, their responsibilities, maybe even who they are.
And of course, get into those deeper meanings, the psychology, the symbols that make it stick.
Let's dive in.
Okay, first things first. Why Frankenstein? Why has the story become like the go-to myth when we talk about science and tech, especially in, Western culture? It's everywhere.
It's fascinating, really. Mary Shelley was tapping into something ancient, the Prometheus myth, stealing fire, that whole thing.
Right.
But she adapted it for her time. The Romantic era, that was a period of huge upheaval. The Industrial Revolution, science really starting to flex its muscles. Frankenstein captured that mix of, well, excitement and, frankly, deep unease about what science could do to society.
And it raises a really difficult question, doesn't it? How are we supposed to manage science when it can literally create life or manipulate it? Seems more relevant than ever now.
Oh, absolutely. Think about biotech, AI, genetic engineering. It's the same fundamental question Shelley was grappling with.
So the Frankenstein myth itself, the paper defines that, right?
Yeah. Basically, it's the popular takeaway, the simplified version. Mad scientist plays God, creates a monster, chaos ensues.
Got it. And we see that reflected in terms like Frankenfood or Frankenstein science.
Exactly. It's a cultural shorthand, a quick way to signal potential danger or ethical overreach in science.
Okay, so that's the public myth. But what about scientists themselves? How do they see it? That 2019 paper actually talked to scientists, didn't it? 12 of them.
Yes. 12 researchers in fields like biotech, robotics, AI. And the main takeaway was pretty clear. That the myth, and Victor Frankenstein in particular, isn't just something the public worries about. It actually functions within the scientific community. It helps set norms about what's considered unethical, what's dangerous. It's almost like an internal warning sign.
Interesting. So it's not just external pressure, it's something they grapple with themselves.
Right. And they also use it to understand, or maybe anticipate, how the public might react to their work. They know people often get their ideas about science from popular culture.
That makes sense. Were there specific examples in the paper?
Yeah, quite a few. There's Robert in neural engineering. He said he avoids the word cyborg.
Why?
Because it has that negative Frankenstein thing vibe,
Yeah.
Man merges with machine, machine turns bad. He knows that resonates negatively.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. What else?
Alphonse, working with rehabilitative tech, mentioned people calling new technologies alien things or even evil entities, just pure suspicion of the unknown.
Wow. Alien things.
Then Carolyn, a computer scientist, pointed out that often the public just doesn't grasp what's actually possible technologically, leading to, well, misunderstandings and fear.
So the myth fills that knowledge gap, but often with negativity.
Pretty much. Agatha from synthetic biology talked about how people react emotionally to the unknown, especially with technology changing so fast. And Elizabeth, in nanotechnology, she highlighted how the media often frames science. It's either going to save the world or destroy it. Very black and white, very sensationalized.
That polarization is definitely a factor. And what about the mad scientist idea? Someone mentioned that too.
That was Henry, a biochemist. He talked about public fear leading people to project those cartoonish mad scientist tropes onto real researchers. It's an image they constantly have to fight against.
The paper also mentioned Victor Frankenstein as a feared self. What exactly does that mean for a scientist?
It's this idea that Victor represents all the things a scientist doesn't want to be. Arrogant, irresponsible, secretive, completely blind to the consequences.
So he's like the cautionary tale personified for them.
Exactly. He's the dark side, the potential negative path they actively try to avoid in their own careers and how they see themselves.
So when these scientists think about the myth, it's clearly more complex for them than just playing God. How did they interpret it?
Well, the core idea most agreed on was a scientist creating something they can't understand or control. But beyond that, there was nuance. Robert saw it as an icon for big questions. Morality, the good and bad of science, how knowledge changes society.
A broader philosophical view.
Right. Byron, in Robotics and AI, connected more with the passion behind it, the drive to ask questions, experiment, discover. Almost the pure scientific impulse.
Interesting. What about others?
Mary, in Genetic Engineering, pointed to the universal fear. The myth taps into fear of the scientist's power. And Polidori, in Mechanical Science, framed it as introducing something non-human into research, and maybe losing something essentially human in the process.
It's telling how different fields relate to it differently, though. You said medical researchers didn't connect as strongly.
Yeah, William, an evolution scientist, noted that. It really depends on the research area. If you're directly making something new in a way that echoes Victor, like an AI or synthetic biology, the myth feels much closer.
Less abstract.
Exactly. For many, it's definitely a cautionary tale. DeLacy, working in cancer treatment, talked about arrogance, causing suffering unintentionally, getting tunnel vision.
Becoming myopic, yeah.
But what's also interesting is how some scientists do connect with Victor's initial drive, that sheer excitement of discovery.
Oh, right. You mentioned Agatha.
Yes, Agatha talked about that urge to discover, to experiment, sometimes pushing against the established rules, even knowing the risks. It reminds you of what Kevin Esvelt called the siren song of major breakthroughs. There's a real pull there.
So Victor is the symbol then, the potential dark side, unintended, maybe terrible consequences.
Definitely. Percy, the AI researcher, even linked it to past scientific errors, like creating toxic organisms by accident. Real-world monsters, in a sense.
And Mary, in genetics, stressed it's not just playing God, it's about the creator facing those unintended results, taking responsibility.
While Henry, in nanotechnology, saw Victor as the classic villain scientist figure, embodying society's underlying fear of science going wrong.
But he's not just bad, right? The paper mentioned ambiguity.
Absolutely. He has positive traits too, creativity, determination. That's part of the complexity. But ultimately, it's the lack of ethics, the missing moral compass, that makes him the pariah, the feared self.
It's when those positive drives aren't checked by responsibility.
Precisely. And that resonates with actual historical examples where science has caused harm, socially or environmentally.
Like Henry said, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Science solves huge problems, but it inherently carries risks. Nuclear power, pollution, it's part of the human endeavor.
Which logically leads to the need for rules and oversight. The scientists agreed on that.
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
Percy listed things like rigor, honesty, transparency, self-critique, caution, all essential to minimize harm.
And Agatha.
She talked about that natural drive to push limits, but stressed that's why you need strong ethical rules and regulations to prevent disasters.
And they feel science today is better equipped than in Victor's time.
Yes, William mentioned better systems, stricter regulations. Transparency came up a lot. Mary, the molecular biologist, felt a strong duty to justify her work publicly.
Which is the total opposite of Victor hiding away in his lab.
Exactly. It's like they actively use the negative image of Frankenstein to shape a positive image for themselves and modern science.
So by contrasting themselves with Victor, they present themselves as responsible, ethical, open to scrutiny. The myth helps define what good science isn't.
That's a really good way to put it. It's a benchmark, helping them navigate their role and project that responsible image.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly to Tanya's reflections. She had a very personal take on this story.
Yeah, her perspective was fascinating. She initially felt this connection to Victor's obsession, that intense creative drive.
She understood it.
But then, that turned into real anger at how he just abandoned his creation, and deep empathy for the creature's loneliness and pain.
So a real shift in perspective.
Definitely. And ultimately, she was just frustrated with both of them. Their selfishness, their destructive choices. It's a very relatable emotional arc, I think.
That feeling of isolation she picked up on, that connects directly to the psychological themes from the other source, right? The simply put psych analysis.
Absolutely. That piece really digs into the psychology. It starts with creation and responsibility. Victor's huge ambition, they call it Promethean, bumps right up against his total failure to take responsibility for what he made.
And the creature pays the price.
Exactly. Then there's identity and otherness. The creature is the ultimate other, rejected just because of how he looks.
But it's not just him. The analysis talks about duality in Victor, too.
Right, the respectable surface hiding the inner corruption. And the creature, conversely, having this monstrous appearance, but initially being innocent, capable of good, it plays with appearances versus reality.
The analysis also brought up parenting, or the lack of it.
Yes, parental influence and childhood trauma. Victor's abandonment is framed as a massive parental failure. It helps explain the creature's development, his rage, his desperate need for connection.
That search for belonging.
Uh-huh. It highlights how fundamental connection is and how devastating rejection can be. And tied into all this is the role of nature and isolation.
Oh, so?
The landscapes in the book, those huge mountains, the ice field, they often mirror the character's inner states. And the isolation, for both Victor hiding his secret and the creature being alone, it pushes them towards madness.
Powerful stuff. And beyond the psychology, there's the symbolism.
Rich symbolism. Light and fire are huge. They stand for knowledge, discovery.
But also destruction.
Exactly. The double-edged sword again. Knowledge can enlighten, but it can also burn. Like Victor's creation.
And the Arctic. The ice.
That frames the whole story beginning and end. It symbolizes ultimate isolation, emotional coldness, the final bleak consequence of Victor's hubris.
Okay, so let's try and pull all these threads together. What are the big takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, first, it's crystal clear. Frankenstein is way more than just a horror novel. It's a really powerful cultural story that affects how we all think about science. Not just the public, but scientists, too. It shapes their view of their work, their duties.
And Victor himself is this really complicated figure for them, a possible self, as the paper put it.
Right. He's got the ambition they might admire, but also all the irresponsibility they fear. He's both an inspiration and a warning.
So it seems pretty important for scientists to actually engage with this myth, not just dismiss it.
Absolutely. Understanding why the story resonates helps them communicate better, maybe build more trust. It helps them project that image of being responsible, ethical researchers, and maybe most importantly, is a constant reminder for them to think about the ethics, the societal impact of what they're doing.
Right.
So thinking about all that, let's leave you, our listener, with a final thought. With science moving so incredibly fast today, AI, gene editing, you name it, how do you think the Frankenstein myth will continue to be relevant? How will it help us navigate the ethics of whatever comes next?
And maybe think about it personally, too. What's your own monster? Is there an unintended consequence, an ethical worry about progress that sort of keeps you up at night? Something to chew on?